All right, I'm prepping it up. When you hear me do the intro, you know we're actually live.
All right.
Okay. Hello. Hello, NextOppSocial family. Welcome to another live chat discussion here on our channel. I'm Richelle Wright Wilson, as always, and I'm joined by my partner here, Joanne Buford. Sorry, losing words today. But today we're joined by healthcare expert Wendy Hooker of Matters LLC. And before we jump into it, if you're watching here with us, either live or on the replay, please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an interview, never miss a live, and never miss out on these incredible discussions that we have here at NextOppSocial. So let's get into it. Welcome, Wendy. Thank you again for joining us here today. We're really excited to talk about an industry that we were just saying right before, that we're seeing so many people, more and more people show interest in pursuing, even as entrepreneurs, that healthcare industry as a whole. So Wendy, tell us more about yourself, your background, and because we're all about entrepreneurship, what caused you to fall in love with being an entrepreneur?
So first I want to say good morning and thanks for inviting me. This is a great platform here. So my background is in social work. And as a social worker, everyone knows social workers, what do? We love helping people. So I fell in love with entrepreneurship right after graduate school. I started working for a company, a medical case management company, and the work and blood, sweat, and tears that I put into this company, I fell in love. I had to market for them. Literally, this is funny. So this was back in 98. So I literally went through the yellow pages. And that's how I started marketing.
Wow.
So that was like, I'm loving that. That's where my love started.
That's awesome.
Wow. So that's something else. That's trial by fire. Picking up the phone, calling through the yellow pages, and prospecting, securing clients. You know, people have like a huge fear of that, right? Talking to individuals whom they don't know and being able to communicate a value prop. And so I have to ask, what prepped you for that? What allowed you to have a certain degree of comfort to go out there and do that kind of work?
Good question. I think I'm gonna have to give it all to my mother. My mom is a teacher, special ed teacher. And she just taught me to sort of be outgoing in my own way. So she's an outgoing person. I'm not so much, but she really encouraged me to sort of get out there and do certain things.
All right. So I want to tease that out a little bit, because that's like I said, it's huge anxiety. You know, most people would rather be burned alive by fire than speak publicly, right? Folks have like a deep-seated fear of that. And, you know, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I found that a lot of folks try to rely on scripts. They try to rely on listening to other people and kind of behave like bots, right? Because they have this anxiety and fear. And what I'm hearing from you is that you were able to get on the phone and be yourself, just be outgoing and be the person you are and develop rapport and be able to engage. And it sounds like that served you very well.
You know, it did. However, let me just add this bit to it. It is important to plan. So before I got the yellow pages, I did make up a script. So I did have a foundation as to work from. And from that foundation, you know, I was able to then share my service.
Yes. So I'm listening to you and I heard graduate school, right? Yeah. And, you know, none of us have, or very few of us have taken a class in high school or in our first couple collegiate years called How to Become an Entrepreneur, How to Be an Entrepreneur, right? For most individuals, you know, what are we taught? You go to school, you make good grades, you go out and get a good job. And if you go to graduate school, you become a lifelong student, and you seek out more and more of these cushy environments, right? Jobs that are familiar to you. I mean, you really deviated from that path. And I understand you fell in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur, but what did that process look like, you know, in terms of how family, friends, people responding, and how did that transition look for you?
So for me, it started more personal because I suddenly became a single parent, and families first. And because my kids were first, I had to create an environment where I could still parent and make a living. So the process for me was, okay, I have all of these expenses. Those expenses became my goal of what I had to achieve. And it built upon there. So first it was to be able to pay bills. Then it was the next step. So it's all in phases. And it's the process grows because you don't know what you don't know. You have to jump in.
I like it. I like it. So you gain this experience. You're making the phone calls. You basically were the PR and marketing person, it sounds like, for this company. You make the decision that I'm going to start up my own business. And, you know, take us through that. You know, what did that process look like? You know, what steps did you take to actually begin putting the semen in place and launching your business?
So, you know, I did it, and that was almost on autopilot. So forgive me if it doesn't sound so it's sequencing. So I would say the process was, again, everything starts with a goal. How do I create that goal? What is it that I needed? For me, I had to learn how to sort of, remember, this is years ago, a computer. You know, forget about cell phone. How do I create effects out of, you know, my copy machine? It was just the simple things that I had to overcome in the beginning. But you have to have a mission as to why are you doing what are you doing. So it's going to be some personal, and there's going to be some business or financial things that goes along in the process. It's very important to surround yourself with people who compliment you. One of the persons who's been with me, for many, many years, Reggie, he's IT. He is my person. He's the one that says, okay, Wendy, this is what you need to do in terms of a website, in terms of making a vision statement, in terms of, you know, your marketing information presenting as a professional person. So you have to surround yourself with people who are willing to help you.
So I want to talk about too with that, was that you're talking about these people, surrounding yourself with these people who you can put that trust into to help you take those bigger steps. Was that one of the biggest factors in helping you make that decision from changing of, you know, you're at this job, you do great at this job, you're an amazing employee, and you have the comfort of this W-2 to being like, I need to do this on my own. I know I can do more. What were some of those, I'm assuming some of these people were probably part of that, but what were some of the other like mindset shifts, especially as a single parent? That's taking a big risk, a big leap, you know, from something that you already realized was not going to get you where you needed to, but to take that giant step to where you do need to go into that entrepreneur life. What were some of those things that had to change, either in mentality or around you or with people?
So it started with me. And this wasn't something that I personally shared with others. I needed it to be personal. So for me, the important people to help me build my business didn't come in the beginning. I had to learn what I needed.
Mm.
So I had so much confidence when I worked for this company. I was fearless.
Mm-hmm.
So that fearlessness and confidence that I had, um, it was a smooth transition. It really was a smooth transition. I just kept myself motivated.
What was what because I know that what from what you were doing and what your background is in case management and all that, and where Care Matters is now, I'm sure that's grown and evolved, right, over the years. What was one of the first things that you focused on because you had that confidence and you knew that you could tackle it? Was that, or did you start with everything all at once as being a full service?
Nope, started right out of my home. And I realized, with my marketing skills, I was able to create my own clientele. And I realized that I had to duplicate myself. So
Mm.
the next step was bringing on someone to do the things that I did and to manage them.
Gotcha.
So, Wendy, you are exceptionally pragmatic, intelligent, and thoughtful. Every conversation I've had with you, I can always tell you've done a deep dive before we had this conversation, like prepared all the time, right? And one of the things that I've oftentimes observed is when you're growing from a team of me to a team of we, like you said, you want to duplicate yourself. However, sometimes the individuals that you're onboarding might not be exact replicas of what you're doing. And this whole idea of I want it done right, I got to do it myself. There's that balance between, the standard and how you want things done versus giving people the freedom to do the things they need to do to be of service to you. What did that process look like, and how difficult of a transition was that for you?
So that was a challenge because in the beginning, I didn't use any screening processes or guidelines. I just know I needed help.
Mm-hmm.
So you hire out of need. And let me tell you, that's not always the best thing to do. But again, it's a learning process. It really is. So I would say now I know I need guidelines. I need a screening tool to help me to bring on people.
And well, if I were doing too deep of a dive into your processes, right? But what do some of those screening processes look like? Like, what were some of, I guess, the criteria that you began to employ once you realized, okay, I can't just hire because I need, but I'm building a culture, I'm building a foundation. I have to have the right people, right? What are some of those things that you were looking for, and what kind of informed those decisions? I heard you talk about vision, mission. I know that's an important piece, right? But what are some of the other things that you implemented to onboard? Because a lot of new business owners have a very difficult time with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to identify the right type of people. What did that look like?
So for what this looks like now is I love emotional intelligence. So when you go over emotional intelligence with a prospective new hiree, that tells you a lot about them and how they're going to function in your company, their personality type, moving forward, dealing with, let's say, a challenging audience, our client, being able to, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
So something that I used to do when I would interview someone or decide whether or not I wanted to work with them is, especially if I was meeting with someone outside the office, I would meet them at a coffee shop and I would arrive 15, 20 minutes early. And I would watch and I would observe them. And if they didn't know what I looked like, I would approach them and I would ask them for help with something minor, something minimal, right? just to kind of see if they had a helpful, altruistic nature about themselves, right? They really, and as business owners, I know we all develop those little strategies and tactics, right? I'm curious, what's a tactic or strategy you employ when you're filling someone out to kind of get an idea whether or not, all right, this is someone who's for me. I want this person on board.
Good question. This is the interesting thing. Everyone who has pretty much I have now has been with me for many years.
Mm-hmm.
So a strategy, I don't have a strategy that I can think of right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter, you have to go with your gut. You really have to go with your gut.
I like it. Now, one other question about this, and we'll move on. You've had people who've been working with you for quite some time.
Yes.
Which also means there are people who are constantly headhunting for your people. There are people who are looking to attract and poach your people from you. How have you been able to maintain those relationships? How have you been able to keep those people on board and kind of build that camaraderie and develop loyalty?
I think it's a challenge. I think in the beginning, once I bring someone on, their goal becomes my goal and vice versa. So I sit down with each person and I'll say, okay, what is it that you want to do for yourself or your family? That maybe you have not been able to do in the past. And I actually sit down with them and we go over their goals. Give an example, one of my staff, she wanted to buy a mobile home. And we're like, okay, so what is this going to look like? This is how much it costs. So this is what you're going to have to do to accomplish that goal. And she did accomplish it. So you have to take a personal interest. That's so important.
I think that's huge that you mentioned that. And I just, as people start working for larger companies, but even as I've worked for other smaller local companies too, to having that personal investment in your people, because, you know, you can only expect your employees to care about your business to a certain level because it's your business, not their business. But by showing them that you're invested in them, then yes, they become extremely invested in the same success and they feel like it's a part of theirs as well. I think that's huge. And it's just something that doesn't get talked about enough and certainly doesn't get highlighted enough, that please invest in your employees. That's amazing. I want to touch on too, a little bit, just so our viewers understand what Care Matters is, where did it start? How has it grown? What do you do there?
So at Care Matters, we initially started off as a medical case management company. So we assist persons who've been catastrophically injured. So our clients either have traumatic brain injuries or severe spinal cord injuries. And our role is to make sure they get all the care they need for their recovery. If it's someone that's, let's say, a spinal cord injury, they may not return to ambulating or walking again, but how can we advocate for them to have a happy and productive life moving forward, making sure they get the mental health, the physical health, everything that they need to be a happy and productive person. From there, I have, it's interesting, a lot of my clients that I've had, like my very first client, I've had him since 98 or something like that. They're getting older and their parents are aging. And so that's how it was easy for me to transition to working with the senior population. So I also work with the senior population by going into their homes and doing safety assessments for their loved ones to help determine if they're able to continue living independently or if they're going to require other avenues, maybe move into assisted living or bring in someone to assist them in their home. And then just my recent business, I opened up an adult day program and COVID shut it down in March.
Yeah.
We had just opened, sorry. We had just opened in January.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it happened. It happened. So fortunately,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, you finish. You finish, please.
Okay. So with COVID, I had to take a deep breath and say, okay, now what? Now what? So we're still doing the medical case management, but I still wanted to continue working, with people. And COVID has unfortunately contributed to a lot of violence in society, at home, in public. And I used my downtime to research. And I have a mentor, he's like in his 80s, and he's mentoring me. And so now I've become certified as an anger management facilitator. So in the event that someone is experiencing some anger management issues because of a family involvement or involvement of something in the community, I can now provide that service to them, as well.
Wendy,
that was gonna be my
sorry,
question.
go ahead.
Is how did you pivot with that anyway, with especially starting something new? And I think that's such a unique way to approach that pivot, is really recognizing what are the needs of the community now, because everything really has changed in just this year.
Yeah, yeah. And just, I hate to say embrace it, but COVID is out of our control.
Right.
It's truly out of our control. So as an individual, as an entrepreneur, I had to focus on what is it that I can control. Okay. And as a social worker and an entrepreneur, you ask that question, what is it, what unmet need is going on in society? What are some of the problems in society that I can contribute to? And that's how, I came up with the anger management. And in addition to that, unfortunately, COVID has contributed to a lot of stress. And I don't know if you guys, we all make jokes about it that, what, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so let's take a drink, So with that in mind, that's not okay if you're working for the airlines, if you're working for the railroads, if you're, working with any level of Department of Transportation. That's not okay. So with that in mind, I also became certified as a substance abuse professional, where if a pilot or someone or any of those professionals, I'm able to assist them with hopefully getting back to work. And this is what I've come up with during COVID. You have to really just look out there and see, how can I help?
I mean, if you can't tell, I'm just so excited to hear you talk about that, right? Because the pandemic has just impacted so many different people in so many different ways. And one of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs are having right now is what's next? What do I do next? And what you share just epitomized, it just encapsulated the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Making an assessment in terms of what the needs are and saying, you know what, I'm going to step in, I'm going to fill this need. I'm going to acquire the learning I need to acquire. I'm going to, with confidence, go out here and meet the need. I love it, man. That was such an invaluable nugget. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Yes.
May I add too? I think too, it's very important for every entrepreneur to have a mentor.
Mm,
That is crucial for someone to, you're going to make mistakes. And I think it's necessary to make those mistakes because you're going to learn from those mistakes. But that mentor is going to give you that extra sort of information and guidance that you need to say, you know what, I did it this way and it worked out, but I think if I would have done it this way, it would have worked out better. A
Mhm.
mentor is very important.
and I'm glad you mentioned that. 'Cause, I mean, I jokingly say this sometimes, but I tell people, you know, choosing a mentor is almost akin to choosing a watch. The person, it has to be the right fit, you know? And then, of course, the nature of the relationship that you have with the mentor, right? And the frequency that you interact, how you interact. I know that's something that entrepreneurs struggle with. It's something I will admit I've struggled with periodically, right? I've needed mentors, different kinds of mentors at different stages of my life and different stages of my business, right? Um, how did you choose your mentor? How do you choose your mentors? What does that process look like in terms of accountability and interacting?
So my very first mentor um, out of graduate school,
Mhm.
well, let me say this. I was looking for a mentor and many people just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what your motivation is. It took a while for someone to say, sure, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to, give it a try with you.
Mhm.
So he was my mentor for about 8 years. He's, since passed away. So now I can say, I told you my mentor, he's like 80 years old. He lives in California.
Mm.
So it's a matter of that person, the mentor, sort of filling that void. They almost become your surrogate parent for you to
Mm.
call and ask, what you may feel a stupid question, but a good mentor will also allow you to do things that they may not agree with.
Mm.
But you do it and you bump your head and then you go to them and say, oh, okay, you were right. I shouldn't have did that. Or to say, the mentor say, you know what? Ooh, no one's ever said that they would do it this way, but go for it. Do your thing. So that's important that a mentor allows you to be you.
You're highly educated, been successful, and what I've observed is oftentimes when individuals come with the receipts, right? Already come with the achievements underneath their belt, that they lack the humility necessary to even seek out mentorship in the first place, right? Because they want to keep up a veneer or a facade, or they're of the attitude that, look, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Why would I need direction, right? I know everything already. Um, and it sounds like that was not a huge hurdle that you had to overcome. But I know you've seen it. I know you've observed it. I know individuals may have sought out your mentorship, and it may not have been a good fit for those reasons. Um, for the entrepreneurs who are listening and maybe have that same attitude about themselves, what advice would you dispense to them?
In terms of what?
In terms of being accepting of mentorship,
Oh,
mm, and also understanding what the nature of that relationship should be, right? Um, I was having a conversation with another entrepreneur the other day, and I have a couple mentors in my life. One of them, man, he's hard as nails, um, but sometimes I need that, right? And he does not allow me to give excuses. Every time I talk to him, the expectation is, what did you do to get better since last time we spoke? And it's almost a situation when he says jump, I oftentimes don't even ask. I just say how high, right?
okay.
And I'll admit it personally. it took a while for me to have the humility to allow someone to kind of, in some respects, almost dictate to me sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So understand that everyone's different.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't necessarily work well with me. I'm the type of person that, you know what, give me your opinion, give me options, but allow me to choose the best route for me. So I've been fortunate with my mentors that, well, I guess because I choose them, that I've been able to grow. So I think it all depends on, you have to start with knowing who you are. It starts with you, and then that'll help you determine the best mentor for you. Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
You're a structured person. I'm a structured person, but we go about it differently. Yes.
I like it. What are some of the epic challenges that you've had?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah. The ugly duckling moment where you were like, oh my goodness, did I really allow that to happen? Did this really transpire? And how did you overcome them?
So going back to when I said you have to take a personal interest in your staff, well, because my background is social work, I've had just one staff that I was trying to be the social worker instead of the leader, so to speak. And it went horribly wrong. So I learned that it's not personal, it is business. So, you know, once you sort of build the relationship with them, you can be their friend. I'm not saying you can't be their friend. However, you have to continue to sort of reevaluate where you are as the leader, as the boss in that relationship, and make the necessary adjustments. I did not make those necessary adjustments along the way. And it was like, horrible. Yeah. So, but I did learn. And that's one of my favorite books. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. You're going to make mistakes. I mean, I've made so many mistakes along the way. We would be here till next week sometime. But I think it's a part of being an entrepreneur is to learn from those mistakes and build upon it and do something different that's going to work to your advantage next time.
What are some of those outside of, you know, what are some of those biggest lessons that you've learned though, that you felt like you had to kind of learn through that trial and error and not just through like, you know what, because there's some lessons I think that we can, as we get better of learning these lessons, we can see it ahead of time and maybe don't have to go through the tribulation of that again. But what were some of those big ones that kind of hit home of just like, yeah, this was a lesson that I don't know, needed to learn or just like stuck with you and really changed the course of what you were doing?
Again, I have to go back to the staffing issues. That's huge because that's it. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but it's so important to monitor yourself and monitor your staff and your interaction. I can't think of any other, let's say, lessons that I've learned because as an entrepreneur, you guys know it's truly a roller coaster, and it depends on how tight you're going to hold on to the bars and not be thrown off. So there's so many lessons I literally can't think of one right now.
I think staff is a big one just in general of like that's managing people. And as an entrepreneur, we don't necessarily, depending on what we're building, we're going and doing this for ourselves. And I think we forget initially about growing and scaling and realizing we're going to have to now manage other people that we we are not those people. We can't control them. We can't, we can't dictate how they think and feel. I think that's probably a huge one just in general, that because it's like with different staff come different lessons. Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
So,
I would say, oh, go ahead.
no, by all means, go ahead.
So as a social worker, you had mentioned before, in school we don't learn about business. And that was something that I'm still learning, is the business side of managing and running a business. But in the beginning, I was in like shock, like, oh my goodness, what's a QuickBook? Just those small things that you have to learn. And as you learn them, you're gonna do them wrong. It's okay. Just keep it moving, fix it, keep it moving. Every problem has a solution.
So I'm hearing a theme though throughout this entire interview, and that's leadership, right? And at some point, I think we all understand that leadership is skill trade, right? It's something that has to be developed, cultivated. Success in entrepreneurship is oftentimes an inside job. Well, it's not all the time. It is an inside job, first and foremost, right? I'm curious to know, how do you sharpen the saw in terms of your leadership? How do you make sure that you're evolving, changing, and becoming a better leader? What are some of the tools, books, whatever you would like to share about that process?
So I'm glad you brought that up. So from the beginning, I knew that due to so many negative people and forces out there, you have to feed your mind with positive information.
Mm-hmm.
And you must find authors or motivational speakers whom you connect with via a book, well, now it's podcast, whatever the situation is. It's very important to feed your mind with positive data.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. So I was reading an article a couple weeks ago where they said that humans typically have about 16,000 thoughts, right, over the course of a day. And that 80% of them are negative and 95% of them are repetitive, which is kind of scary when you think about it, right? 80% of your thoughts are negative, and then you're repeating most of these thoughts. What are, I guess, some of the habits you've inculcated to combat these thoughts, right? You said listening to podcasts, reading, making sure that, you're taking in positive information. Is there anything that you're doing systemically on a daily or weekly basis to make sure that that's happening?
Schedule, plan. You have to brainwash yourself and come up with a plan. Some people may say, before you go to bed, come up with your goal or your positive affirmation. I say do it at night, do it in the morning, just keep it going. Don't wait till you're down. Keep it going on a regular basis, feeding yourself with what you want out of life. Whether it's personal or business, you have to keep feeding your mind with what you want.
I love it. Right now, if you were to account for some of the misconceptions you think people have about entrepreneurship, right? The things that you would want, particularly a new entrepreneur, to be aware of, right? You have, like you said, all these influences. You got Facebook, Instagram. You're bombarded with all these images of what people believe entrepreneurship should be and what the entrepreneurship life is all about, right? Are there any misconceptions you'd like to clear up that you believe people need to understand before they decide to make the decision to be about an entrepreneurship life?
So one thing, success is different for everybody. It's personal. And it's not going to transpire overnight. So when you're looking at social media and you're seeing what others have obtained, they're not telling you how long it's taking them to get what they have acquired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have a realistic view of what you want and make a plan to achieve it. But it may take 2 or 3 years. So
Mm.
you have to be committed and dedicated to what you want and stay focused. And understand there's going to be detours like COVID. That's out of our control.
What about within your industry, in the healthcare industry, as someone who's either wanting to pursue more in that industry or within the entrepreneurial world of that industry? I think that what you just said would apply absolutely to advice that people have misconceptions around, but especially I know here in Michigan, especially with the traumatic brain injury community and all those changes that happen specifically in our state with auto no fault and all that stuff.
Mhm.
What are some things that if someone is exploring this industry in the healthcare world that you'd want them to be aware of, just diving into it, you know?
Do your homework. Just do your homework. So you mentioned the auto no fault reform. I've been a part of this world since I started.
Mhm.
However, I prepared myself many years ago because we were the only state that had it.
Mhm.
So to me, it was
Mhm.
inevitable that one day it may change.
Yeah.
Then what? As a young person, then. So it's important to do your homework. You still can go in the medical field. You still can have a medical case management company. Maybe it's not auto, maybe it's workers' comp now. You know, maybe it's doing care management for seniors. It's about finding your niche, finding your niche. Um, and understand that although there's a lot of companies out there that may be doing what you're doing, so what? Learn from
Mm.
them. Learn from them. If there's a company, ABC Home Case Management Company, do your research on them. If
Mm-hmm.
that's a company that you would like to be like, guess what? You have your invisible mentor
Yeah.
and follow them. But don't become intimidated by the larger companies saying that I can't compete with them. You're not trying to compete with them because your goals are personal to you. You have to have blinders on. Like, a horse, you have to really have blinders on and focus.
Love that.
I like it. I like it. So we're starting to wrap up here. And, we kind of end the call with some positive affirmations, if you will, in terms of lessons you'd like to impart. And also, of course, it gives you an opportunity to really let our listening audience know what your value prop is, right? And one of the questions that we typically will ask is, what's your competitive advantage? What's the thing that makes Care Matters and the other endeavors that I know you're involved with, what you believe sets you apart, right?
So what sets me apart from other entrepreneurs is that I am a social worker. So I take things from a holistic point of view. I don't just look at it from just a medical point of view. I realize that it's all interchange, that it takes us all to make this thing go around properly. And I'm not going to just focus on one aspect of a patient. I realize I have to focus on everything that person sort of comes in contact with
Mm-hmm.
to provide them the appropriate care that they need.
I like it. I like it. I'm thinking about some of my family members whom I know could have benefited from your services, right? Some of them are no longer here, right? And I remember one of the things that I oftentimes struggle with, I know other people struggle with in general, is how to choose the right care provider, right? How to choose the right company, how to choose the right service. Because for me, the scariest thing, not even just thinking about my family, but families in general, is I know because of this pandemic, I mean, you're on the front lines, right? And people who are caring for the most vulnerable in our community are stressed out too. They're under a lot of duress too. And I know that can lend a type of situation where abuse can transpire, right? People may not be receiving the care that they deserve and that you would expect and that you want for your loved ones. You know, for individuals who have very real concerns about that, what's the process that you would encourage individuals to take on in order to choose the correct provider?
Connect. And the way that a family is going to connect is, let's say prior to COVID, is to go to the provider's office, to meet their staff, to see how they, function on a regular basis. What are some practical advice that they're giving? Or are they just a robot saying you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It has to be based upon the patient's needs. It has to be personalized and unique for them. Because, going back to a brain injured person on paper, it can look the same. Their injury can look exactly the same. But because of family dynamics and other things going on with their life, you have to treat them uniquely. So that's what a family needs to look at. What will I provide to you differently based upon your needs? So I would have to know your needs. I'd have to ask those questions to find out what's important to you. What is it that you want to be accomplished for the care of your loved one? And then it has to be tailored. Now, post-COVID, it's a little different. But still, you want to keep have that connection, even if it's a facility. So like one practical advice I would tell families if their loved one must go into a facility, pick a facility that's close to the family to make it easy for visitation. There could be a company or facility that has an A1 rating, but if it's 100 miles away, that may not be the best. You could find a facility with a C rating, but if you're actively involved and you connect with that staff, that makes a difference. That makes a difference.
Love it. Love it. So, in closing, we've covered a lot too, my goodness. I mean, this interview was so invaluable. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, so many incredible nuggets. But what's the number one lesson you would want to impart to our listening audience about entrepreneurship, your journey, and just, making a decision to start a business during this pandemic? What's the number one lesson that you'd like to impart?
Take a deep breath. Truly, seriously, take a deep breath. It's so important that you take care of yourself first so that you can make the appropriate decisions for yourself moving forward. So in a time of COVID, find out, what is it that you wanted to do pre-COVID but didn't have the time to do, and now you do. Grasp it, and then understand that, what? Things are going to happen that's unexpected. That's okay. That's life. That means you're living. Keep it moving. Just do it. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to look silly sometimes. It's okay to ask those, what someone may call stupid questions. But if you're not doing those things, that means you're not doing anything. Just do something. Do something. If you're not making mistakes, you're not moving towards entrepreneurship.
I love it.
Wendy, if someone wants to reach out to talk to you more, or they want to learn more about Care Matters and what you do, what is the best way for them to do that?
So my email is wendy@caremattersllc.com. And my office number is 248-691-9034.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was such a great chat. We appreciate you taking the time. We know you're busy and you've got a lot of things going, as you articulated here in this chat with us. We really appreciate you spending time with us. If you're watching, if you have questions for Wendy, feel free to put them in the comments here. We'll make sure she gets them. Please make sure to reach out to her. And as just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed, please do so you don't miss great conversations like this one. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Thanks so much.